My guest today is Paul Rappaport, the author of Gliders Over Hollywood, Airships, Airplay, and the Art of Rock Promotion. In it, he recalls a 33-year career at Columbia Records, where he was instrumental in promoting the records and careers of everyone from Bob Dylan to Bruce Springsteen, Pink Floyd, Rolling Stones, Elvis Costello to Billy Joel, Judas Priest to Alice in Chains, and many, many more. Too many to mention right here. Welcome, Rap, to your 15 minutes of fame.
I appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much. 33-year career down to 15 minutes.
Down to 15 minutes. We'll give you more, of course.
All right, tell it to me in 15 minutes.
Okay. I always like to start at the beginning. Where did you grow up, and what did your parents do for a living?
I grew up in a small town in Southern California called Bellflower, which was close to Downey, which some people might know Downey, California, because there were some guitar things that happened there, and the Carpenters came out of Downey, and the Blasters came out of Downey. But it's a small town, blue collar. My dad started out. They came actually from East. My mother had been born in Baltimore. In fact, I was born in Baltimore, but they drove out when I was 2 years old, and my dad did odd jobs until he found a business that he fell in love with, which was reconditioning steel barrels, the 55-gallon steel drums that, they're made out of metal. You see them, oil companies use them, chemical companies use them. Turns out that you could recycle those, and a lot of these companies preferred the recycled version because they didn't, and at that time you're talking in the 50s, a brand new, let's say, oil drum could cost $7. My dad would clean them out, refurbish them, repaint them, and then sell them for $3. So everybody loved these reconditioned steel barrels. Mm-hmm. And he started at the bottom. He started as a truck driver. He eventually went to help the owner run the plant, eventually took over running the plant, worked his way from a kid who never got to go to college, who went right to World War II. So he had a lot of street smarts, but worked himself up from nothing to become the president of that drum company, and built it to be the biggest and most efficient drum company in Southern California. And they started very small. It was a small company called Rose Cooperage, and there were a lot of these small Cooperages, Levine Drum, Rose Cooperage, a few others. The giant company was Myers Drum. And but my dad, coming from New York, people in California weren't ready for this kind of energy, right? They didn't. This was unbelievable. If you, let's say you're the Central Valley and you're picking fruit, or you're picking peaches, you got to put them in these drums right away because you got to flash freeze them. It means when the peaches are ripe, and you never know exactly when that's going to happen, you need these barrels right away, and you need 200, 400, 600,000. If you called Myers Drum, they were like the British Army. You march, shoot, right? They go, oh, we could have a truck up next Wednesday. And the guy'd be on the phone. The farmer would go, you don't understand. We need them now. So my dad ran 24-hour shifts. He called guys in the middle of the night. So he built that whole place on service, as a New Yorker, going 1,000 miles an hour. And people knew they could call him at any time, and he would deliver. So he became very well known in the business, and by all these companies that just really wanted this kind of service. I mean, he was nuts. I mean, I could be surfing. I grew up, in Southern California in the '60s, right? I'm a surfer. I'm playing in bands on the weekends. I'm driving a 390 Mustang, racing cars in the street. This is being a teenager in the early '60s. He would come down. He knew where I surfed. He would come down to Huntington, stand on the cliff, and call me out of the water. Hey, Paul, the peaches are in Manteca. Do you want to earn time and a half? I'm like, yeah. He goes, good. I can't find another driver. Go home and get washed and meet me at the plant. And I would
Okay.
drive on this great, I had this 200-foot truck that was 40 feet long. It was 13 feet high. It had 8 speeds forward. I mean, I learned how to drive this big freaking truck down scary roads, down the Grapevine, which was a pretty scary road at the time. Um, but it was
Well,
a
I
cool.
can see where you got your no fair attitude in your career. What about your mom? Did she?
Yeah, my
Did,
dad said, "Hey, Paul, when it says use no, when it says lower gear, like when it says trucks use low gear, don't wait. When you see that sign shifted into low gears, a lot of these guys think, yeah, 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 I'll get there, and then the truck's going too fast, and when they shift it into low gear, it just blows the transmission up. So um, um, I learned about that, and I learned just to sort of be on your own. You know, when you're a truck driver, you're your own boss. You got to get there, you got to stop. You're going to see all these different things. It's kind of a cool job because you see things that you've never seen before. And
well, what about your mom? Did she work outside the house?
she did not because my dad was very old school, and she didn't go to work till later in life because this is weird to say, but he wouldn't allow it. And he just said, "Look, I can't have you working. It's going to make me. It makes us look weird. Whatever it was in those days, it was like I'm making enough money. You don't need to work. I don't want you to work. You know, obviously things changed in the 60s and 70s and the 80s for women, but
Yeah.
back then, I mean, my dad was my dad was such a character. Okay, this guy's from Brooklyn, right? Big, big, boisterous, you know, mouth, big barrel-chested guy. Not that tall, but just, big this way and full of energy. Eh, But the world was changing and he couldn't get used to it. He would call me up and go, Paul, what? My life, like I'm really just got thrown sideways. I don't know what to do. I said, well, Dad, what happened? What happened? He goes, I just saw a woman on a telephone pole. I go, yeah. He goes, no, she had a hard hat. Paul, she's like, there's a woman on a telephone pole with a hard hat laying telephone lines. And I'm like, yeah. He couldn't deal with it, right? The woman's
Yeah.
place was in the home.
I got it. I got it.
And what was funny was, as things changed in the '60s, um, we, where this sounds dumb now, but women were becoming people. I mean, he actually bought a T-shirt for my mom that said, "My wife is a person," which she wore.
That's funny.
But he was a character. He would get in arguments with all the hippies in front of cantors, and tell them the way it was. And he was a big guy to tell you how the world worked. And but everybody loved him. And natural storyteller. And I think I got my storytelling from him.
Yeah,
And
I think
I
so
used to love to
too.
tell stories. So.
Now, given that he did not go to college and you went to college,
hmm
was he disappointed or supportive that you went into the record business for a living?
In the beginning, I think he was disappointed. I know he wanted me to be a lawyer. He
Okay.
had it in his mind that I would be an attorney. I think I would have been a good attorney because at the end of the day, if you're not the musician in the music business, you're talking people into something, right? Whether you're the producer, whether like I did promotion, I'm talking radio stations and playing records, whether you're a press person. And I, either organically or developed the gift of gab. Um, he really wanted me to be an attorney. I was a philosophy major at UCLA, which could one of the things you could do very few things with that degree. You could be teach philosophy, or it was a good path into becoming an attorney because it stretched your mind thinking. And I took the LSAT, but I just it just wasn't me. I mean, halfway through the test I was like, why am I doing this, and I had to come home and say, Pop, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not. I don't want to break your heart, but I don't think that I'm going to be an attorney. And at the time, I was, I think it was my junior year. I had gotten a job as a college rep for Columbia Records. My
Okay.
dad knew. Now my dad always supported everything I did because I played in bands all through high school and in college.
Yeah.
And he, when I would need a guitar or an amp or a piece of gear, he would support me. Say, Paul, I'll tell you what, I'll pay you. I'll pay half because you're working. You're driving the truck. I mean, before I drove the truck, I used to fix the trucks. I started as a welder at 14.
Okay.
My dad took me to the plant. He taught me, the guy taught me how to weld, and I welded these rings that they put on, these drums. With the certain
Right.
drums are closed top, certain are open top. They have a lid, they have a ring that you clamp down on it, and I would build these rings. So I started at a very young age knowing what work was, real work. This is hard work. This is like, manual labor. And then when I was 16, he put me in a truck, and it was so funny. Drive. I'm like, Pop, I just learned how to drive a car. He goes, drive. It's the only way you're going to learn how to drive a truck.
Your career reminds me of advice that sorry, advice I learned from a career coach. And she said, it's great to follow your passion, but not everyone has the talent of that passion. So, for instance, your passion may be baseball, but not everyone's going to be a major league star.
Yes.
Your passion is movies, but not everyone's going to be a director. Your passion is rock and roll, but not everyone's going to be a rock star. So she said, find a job in the industry of which you're passionate about. If you can't be a major league baseball player, work for a baseball team. If you can't
I
be,
think that, I think that's good advice. My dad, when I told him that I was really steering towards the music industry, which he didn't know that much about, said, look, I've always supported you. Here's the advice I'm going to give you. Do whatever you love to do, something that really moves you. And if it's the music business, it's the music business. He said, you don't want to be watching the clock. He said, because the money won't make you happy. I'm not going to tell you money's not something that everybody wants, because it's very helpful for a lot of reasons. He goes, but don't let the money drive you. You must do what you love so that you get up every day with a purpose. He goes, you're going to have off days and bad days, but that was the advice he gave me. So when I went
well,
into
and he lived by that advice from
yeah,
what you're telling me. Yeah.
yes, and when
And
he went
he found something he was excited to get up to do it every morning.
yes, and uh, when went into the music business, he did not understand a lot of how it worked. He didn't, for the longest time, understand what promotion was, because promotion in those days is you're trying to talk, programmers into playing records on their radio stations, right? And then trying to build, if one station plays it, oh, and it works, then you can go to a next station and tell them, oh, this, the station, at the city next to you, or two cities away is playing this, it's working. For people listening who don't know how records are built, records start in certain markets. They may not be major markets, but it could be a place where there's less pressure for ratings, and promotion person brings music in. Even to this day, even though there's streaming, the radio still exists, and you would have someone play, do a favor, play a record, give it a start, and then if there's phone calls, right? If you have interested people going, oh, play that again, then that song works, and you go tell another station, and in the headquarters of a record company, somebody's keeping tabs of all the songs and where are they working, and oh, hey, this song just blew up big in Philadelphia. Okay, go tell the people in Chicago. That's how records are broken, as we call it in the business, so that things build and build and build, and it's a story that you tell from city to city, what have you. It's the way bands are booked and all that, also. But so what was funny is, as I grew in the business and I began to have real jobs, like substantial, even before I became the head of rock promotion for Columbia, I was regional rock promotion, which I was promoting records, in Arizona and Southern California and San Francisco and Seattle and Portland and Denver and all these places. But he didn't understand the concept of how this worked. And people would say to him, and this is so funny, because even when I got the big job and I became who I became, I become a vice president of a major label, people would say to my dad, what does your son do for a living? And he would say, oh, he peddles records. Like old Jewish guy. Hey, he peddles records. I'm like, Pop, you can't tell people that. They think I have a station wagon. And I'm going, hey, Billy Joel. I go, Dad, like I have like a real job. I became vice president. And when you became vice president at CBS Records, you got a bigger office, you got a couch, you got chairs, you got, you had, in the back of, because I'd worked for them for so long, I had so many gold and platinum records. I mean, I have a picture of me with a wall dripping with gold and platinum albums, which I had hung, as a way to sort of buffer managers when they would walk in. At least they'd walk in and see that and go, "Oh, this guy must know what he's doing." Before they start with their demands, it'd be
Yeah.
like, "Oh, okay, I'm dealing with this guy." So, but he
Well,
walks in.
let's talk about your book a second. I
Okay.
really enjoyed your book. I think your book is written from the heart as well as the head.
Mhm.
Um, and I would tell people, even if you're not interested in the music industry, this is a great book to read just for the stories. So my question is, what audience did you have in mind when you were writing this book?
I had many audiences in mind. And I just need to finish this last thing I told you so that anybody listening will understand why I told you about the wall of records. It's because when
Okay.
my dad finally walked in, he looked at me, he looked at the wall, he saw the gold and platinum records, he looked at the couch, he looked at my view out the window, in black rock, and he looked at me and he goes, "Paul, I still don't quite understand what you do for a living, but you must do it great. So I want to congratulate you for being a vice president at Columbia Records."
There you go.
I just had to tell you that because it was very cute. Anyway, but that was him, and he's in the book. There's a couple of great stories about him in the book. But when I wrote it, I had many audiences in mind, and I had to think about as I wrote because I was writing, first of all, just to capture these magical times from the late 60s, 70s, 80s, and into the 90s of this business, which was so glorious and so amazing. But it was also like the Wild West. We were making it up as we went along. People should understand that in the early 60s, rock music is still like pretty hip. It's not a mass appeal. It doesn't become mass appeal until FM radio grows because the music's growing. So if you're listening to FM underground radio in 1968 or 69, or you're hearing Pink Floyd and Jimi Hendrix, but these are new sounds. You're not hearing this on top 40 radio, right? When rock, all of a sudden the artists begin to grow and it explodes, and FM radio becomes rock radio of the 70s and then rock radio of the 80s, then it becomes a very big business. So I'm trying to capture, you know, the beginning, the middle, and almost to the place where it's kind of over because the money takes over. It was a very artistic business for a couple of wonderful decades. So I'm trying to capture everything. I want people to know what were the times like. What was the what kind of what we were living in. What was the politics like? What was early FM radio? Then what is it like to work for a record company? What was it like for me through my eyes to be a kid getting a part-time job at a label? And then you follow me through, these machinations of being a local promotion, and then I become the first rock promotion man in the country, et cetera, et cetera. So the first, audience is the audience of all the people that, let's say, are our peers, our age group, who went to all these concerts in the 70s and the 80s and into the 90s, who might like to know, how did it work from the inside? How was it like dealing with artists? What was it like talking to them? What was it like trying to get them to do things? What did they demand? What was the relationship like, and what were they like outside of the rock star that right? And I wanted to share all of this information. I wanted people to have fun like I had fun. But then because I'm a musician and I've been playing guitar, which you read about in the book, I've been playing guitar since, well, 7 years old when I started playing lap steel, and then 14, when I picked up, regular guitar. But I'm also writing with there's some inside stuff for guitarists because I didn't want to make it just a bunch of stories. And because I'm a player, and all these people not all of them, but a lot of them that I worked with, rock guitar is a major part of it. So I've got stories in the book with Michael Bloomfield, and Taj Mahal and Keith Richards, the Rolling Stones, and Bruce Springsteen and David Gilmour and Ron Wood and all these people that are guitar players. So as you read, I would wonder, geez, is this a little too inside? But then I'd push the envelope a little that way, saying, well, if people don't really care about Keith Richards' G tuning, they'll get over it. It'll be okay. If you don't want to learn how to play the blues, but for anybody, and there's so many guitar players in this world, in the United States and around the world because of the Beatles and Elvis Presley. I figured, well, there's another audience because they've had similar experiences. I just read Mike Campbell's book from the Heartbreakers, which I highly recommend, called Heartbreaker, and he tells a story about his early, life and how he wound up in Tom Petty's band and what it's like to be a guitar player and his guitar heroes. And as a player, I appreciated it. So that was another audience, right? It was like, okay, I'm going to pay attention to these people and I'm going to write this because I know it and it meant a lot to me and it'll mean a lot to those people. Then a third audience was, what about people that are like 25 years old who are or 20 years old, or they're in the music business school and they want to get into the business? Even though this is a business of another time, there's a lot in this book you can learn about that would help you in the business of today. And so essentially, as I began to write it, I was going, wow, there's like three audiences here. And I just wanted to make sure I had all of them covered. And I'll tell you one last thing. The original version didn't have the story of Alice in Chains. I thought the book was getting long, and I thought, I'll just write that I did this. But I gave the book to my bass player in my band to read just because I wanted somebody to read it other than me to, first feedback. What do you think? And he said, well, there's like a whole generation of people that grew up with Nirvana, Alice in Chains, and Pearl Jam. You can't gloss over this. You have to write, because I told him the story, which you read, pretty amazing story. He goes, you have to write the Alice in Chains story. And the reason that's in there is because my bass player made me put it in, which I'm glad he did, because that's, it's that audience of people who, are a little younger, and they might want to know about the Seattle sound and how did it come about? How did it break big on rock radio, which if you read, was a big part of that. So and as I would go, is this too far inside? Okay, maybe end it here. Is this not enough? The main publisher of the book, who's the main editor of the book, who is the publisher assigns you a main editor. He asked me to fill out some things like that there wasn't enough. So it was this give and take of, okay, I think we have enough of this, or there might be too much of this. And, he said, well, you met Miles Davis. I said, yeah. I said, well, you just can't say that. I want to know what it was like. What was your experience? So, all through it, you're just kind of tweaking it,
It read to me that it was very well balanced between all the artists and all the genres and the history. I want to ask you about someone whose photo is in the book, but no story.
Yes.
And that's George, our mutual friend, George Charlton.
Yes.
So George and I are classmates of Northfield Mount Hermon School in Western Massachusetts, and he worked for Columbia Records. Did he report to you or just work with you on special assignments?
Both, because he reported to me when he was local, when he was a local promotion man. I'm a national promotion man.
Okay.
Now there are many. When you're a local promotion man, you're in charge of George was in charge of San Francisco and surrounding areas, and he might have done local in another town before that. I don't know his whole lineage, but his main boss would have been the head of overall promotion. So there's a head of promotion. Under him, there's rock promotion. That's me. There's top 40 promotion. There could be dance promotion under this. Country's is a whole nother thing. And R&B and rap and all that eventually became a separate department. But his main boss is the head of promotion, but he reports to all of us because George is working top 40 hit records, and he's also working album rock radio. So he would report to me in that sense. but we never, because the way things were in those days, the whoever had the stripes, it wasn't a thing. Like we were all trying to, it's like, okay, even Don Einer, when he took over to be president of Columbia Records, sat me down and he said, Paul, I've admired you from afar. I love the way you work. I happen to be the guy wearing the stripes right now, but I don't want that to get in the way. We're just all record people, right? We just know what to do. Like Donnie happens to be the president. I happen to be the head of rock promotion. George happened to be the local guy. But there's this mutual respect. It wasn't a typical boss, you know, all my bosses that I ever had, it was just never, it didn't work like that. It was more like a family. In fact, we were known as our moniker, CBS Records, was known as the family of music. I mean, that's the sort of name that we had. So,
Well, that brings up another question. You spent 33 years at Columbia Records. I have to imagine with your success, you were recruited by other labels, but you never left. Why is that?
um, they would come along, not that often, but I had a few, and they would offer me way more money because that's what it would take to get you to leave a major label. And the reason I never left was I'm a music guy. I'm not a money guy. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's nice to have money, and you have a lot less worries if you have it. But I could have left for twice what I was making to work for a new startup or a smaller label. But that meant that I would be leaving the roster, right? So that means I'm not going to get to work with Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Santana, Pink Floyd, the Rolling Stones, Elvis Costello, you name it, Tony Bennett, I would be leaving that. So now I'm going to work with a brand new band, but I couldn't leave these people because I was they all a lot of that music's in here since I'm a teenager. I mean, for me to get to work with Bob Dylan is a big deal. For me to get to work with the Rolling Stones and not only work with them, but help them accomplish not only things they want, but things they don't even know they want. Like if you read the book, I'm doing things for these people they never even thought of because I wanted to be the best promotion man in the world. So I'm doing things that other people are going, whoa, what's that? Part of my MO. So I couldn't leave that. So yeah, I could have made twice as much money, but I'm looking at them going, I'm doing great. And I'm working with these people. How am I
Yeah.
gonna? Yeah, I couldn't do it. I was just like, it's too amazing to leave. The
Well,
experience was amazing.
it's like abandoning your family.
Yeah, it's like exactly. I mean, and you get to know these people for a long time, and there are real relationships. I mean, sometimes friendships that
Yeah, yeah, for
that you
sure.
make. So yeah, so that's why.
Well, one of my cliches is that a business relationship is just a personal relationship on another level.
It can be. I don't know in today's world, the music business still works on relationships to a certain extent, but not as much as it did during my day. It became harder and more bottom line in terms of you could go to somebody back in the day and say, look, I really need this. And they'd say, okay, because they would know that someday they'd come to you and say, I really need this. Or maybe it's something they don't believe in. Maybe it's a program at a radio station going, hey, Rap, my nickname's Rap because my last name's Rappaport. Hey Rap, I really don't believe in this song. And I'd say, I get that, but I need to know if it's any good. Can you do me a favor? You don't have to add it officially to your playlist. Could you have your night guy play it? It's a business of give and take. It's a business of favors,
Right.
right? I mean, my MO when I became the head of rock promotion was to just lavish rock radio with promotions that were so big like Pink Floyd's coming to town. I'm going to borrow their pig. They had it inflate. If anybody's seen Pink Floyd, they're famous for their inflatables. One is this pig that they would float over stadiums for years, and they had a few of them because, of course, if one had an issue and they were on tour, they needed another one. So I would do things like, hey, I'm going to borrow Pink Floyd's pig. I'm going to fly it over your radio station. I'm going to paint your radio station pink. I'm going to put Klieg lights, like big super trooper spotlights on it. People are going to be driving by your radio station. You're going to be in the newspaper. I did this in LA at big station KLOS, and I convinced David Gilmour and Nick Mason to do an interview on the roof of their radio station, which
Right.
they did not want to do, by the way. But
Well, that's the salesman of your father in
yeah,
you.
but they did me a favor. So anyway, so now if you paint a radio station pink and you put spotlights on it and you're flying this pig and you got Pink Floyd doing an interview on the roof where the big avenue, La Cienega Avenue in front of, okay, it stops traffic, right? For an hour, it just stops traffic. It's an event in Los Angeles. It's hard to get noticed in Los Angeles. It's a big city. If you do that for a radio station and they become the talk of the town for a month, the program director would call me up and go, "Oh my God, do you have any new bands? Can I help you out?" You
Yeah.
know, so this was my MO because I would try to give, and then ask every so often. And then, but it's this kind of business of favors. You read in the book about Tom Rainey, who was a great salesman for us in Los Angeles, and he goes into Tower Records. And I wrote the conversation word for word because you wouldn't believe it. I mean, Tom walks in, the guy goes, "Hey Tom, how you doing today?" "I'm doing great." "Oh, what do you got for us?" "Oh, there's a Miles Davis, record that's just being released." And the buyer goes, "This is Tower Records San Diego." "Well, Tom, is it new stuff or old stuff?" And Tom's a music guy, but he doesn't know everything. He goes, "Well, does it matter if this Miles stuff is new stuff or old stuff?" And the guy said, "Frankly, yes." He goes, "The old stuff sells better than the new stuff." So Tom's just looked at him and said, "Okay, then it's old stuff." And the guy
So,
said, "Oh, this is real. This is what the record business was like that I was in." And the buyer looks at him and he goes, "Okay, I'll take 2 boxes. Let's go to lunch."
there you
Now,
go.
what does that mean? That means that the buyer knows that a major salesman from a major record company needs him to take in 2 boxes of a Miles Davis to put on a shelf. He knows the guy needs it. He knows he needs it whether he can sell it or not. But he's going to do Tom a favor. And you want to know why? Because there's going to be a bunch of music that's going to come in that are hits. And he's going to say, "Hey, Tom, I need some billing on this. I need a break. I need a discount, or I need a longer time to pay you guys back." I mean, he's going to get it back, right? This is how this business works. And so the beauty of it was that if you had a reputation, um, you could, um, uh, you could get things done by your reputation alone, based on the fact that people knew there would be reciprocal, favors at the time that they needed them. And that's
Yeah.
the whole business, no matter what you did, ran like that. And it was a glorious way to do business because it made things easier. You
Well, it
didn't have,
seems like that was pretty much yesteryear. So as the music business moved from vinyls to CDs to Spotify, online streaming, it looks like promoters like yourself have been replaced by influencers. Is there still a role for promotions like Gliders Over Hollywood?
I think that there's always room for promoters, um, because there is still some old school promotion done, but a few things have changed. And sadly, one of the things that's changed is that the bridge, well, I learned promotion from people from the 50s, and then I taught it to people, and they taught it to people, and they taught it. I mean, I write the art of promotion because promotion is an art form if you do it correctly. For instance, um, I was doing an interview in New York at Q104 a couple of months ago with a disc jockey friend of mine, whose middays is huge, Ken Dashow. He's a big famous disc jockey, and he had read the book, and he said, I was reading the part where you're trying to get someone to listen to music, and you say in your book the worst thing you can do as a promotion person is walk into somebody's office and sit down and play them music. Back in the day, it's a record, then it goes to CD, then it goes to streams on a computer. It doesn't matter, but you're still playing somebody music. You want to get them on board. You want them to play it on their radio station. excuse me. And these people, their playlists are packed and they mostly play hits. So there's a bunch of people vying for these same slots for new music. It's very competitive. There's a lot of record companies. He said, you wrote in your book that the worst thing you can do is go to somebody and play them a song and ask them their opinion. What do you think? And I said, yes. I said, because you don't want their opinion, not to be mean. You want the opinion that you help create. Okay. I have the music. I have the luxury of presenting the music to someone who's going to play it on a radio station or a promoter who's going to book a band. I have the luxury of presenting the music a certain way. Now, I know that program directors are all thinking about music they don't want to play. They want to keep things tight. You go into an office and try to play somebody a song. Even today, look, there's radio stations. There's still radio stations that play music. There's still promotion people out there. I mean, radio doesn't mean quite what it used to because now, there's internet and people are doing video games, whatever. But it still exists. And there are influencers, right? On online. But the point is that he said, that's a lost. What you used to do, which was what I would do, is say, hey, look, I want to book a lunch with you. It could be a music director or a program director from a radio station. I would make sure that lunch was 20 minutes away in a car, if I could, because I would get them out of the office. Their whole mind changes when they're out of the office. You're trying to play some of the music in an office and they're getting phone calls, they're on their computer, disc jockeys are coming in, talking to them. I've had this happen. You could be in the best part of the song and the guy's wife calls. Oh, there's a thing with the kid. We got to take, it's gone. Like what you're trying to get, you can't. You put a person who you want to play music, whether you want it on Spotify or you want it on radio, however you want it. You put them in your car. They're outside the office. All those troubles are gone. They're looking out the window. They're looking at the scenery. I've got their radio station cranked up. Maybe it's springtime. The windows are rolled down. They're in a great mood. They're in the mood that they can listen to music for music's sake. I'm not talking them into playing anything. They're not feeling pressure from me. It's just, hey, this stuff's coming out in a few months. Don't worry about it. But I really like this. What do you think of this? They're bopping along going, hey, this is pretty good. These kinds of presentations. I played Nebraska, the album Nebraska, for big consultants in a limousine. We were on the way to Billy Joel's house. There's a whole other story where Billy was making dinner for these radio consultants. We did 3 nights of it. And on the way, it was going to be an hour drive from the city to Billy's house. He lived in Lloyd Neck at the time and on Long Island. I said, this is a perfect place to play Nebraska for these guys were in charge of like 60 rock stations, 30 rock stations. They all had a number of rock stations. This is a perfect place to play Nebraska. How the hell are you going to play Nebraska? You need a quiet place. This is a different kind of record. I'm in a dark limousine playing them Nebraska. That's a presentation, right, of music. It's different than just going in and going, oh, here's the cassette, listen to it on your own, or I'm in your office, how are they going to understand Nebraska? So my friend, going back to Ken Dashow, he says, Paul, it's a lost art. I'm watching, all the promotion people now go into Z100, which is the huge, top 40 in New York, or, the easy listening station or whatever station. He goes, they're doing exactly what you said not to do. They go in with their music and they play the song. In your book, you're saying that's the worst thing you can do. And I'm saying, yeah, it is. So somewhere the bridge broke. Nobody taught them. Here's another idea. Here's another way to think about that you get to present music. Somewhere, Al, and I think it's in the mid-90s. It may have been before then, but definitely by the mid-90s, the music business becomes the money business. In my day, art ruled. The artist ruled. All the decisions, or most of the decisions, were made with art first. And sometimes we had to have a hard decision with things we couldn't accommodate, certain album covers or whatever. But then once it became corporate, so corporate that it was like, oh my God, money, 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 money. Don't leave any money on the table. Now you get to the place where the favors mean less because it's a little more crunch time. Oh my God, am I going to make enough money? I would love to do you a favor, but I can't because I'm afraid that we're not going to make the quarter or whatever it is. Then the music business changes and it becomes a different business to that extent. Influencers, or you could call them modern day promotion people. A good influencer will probably tell you there's an art to being an influencer. There's an art to being on Instagram. There's an art to selling things. There are still a number of promotion people that, radio still exists in a number of different formats.
Well, radio still exists, but I'm not sure AM has much of a life because I can't. When I buy a new car, then there's no AM stations on it. It's just FM. And so
Well, I mean, as things are changing, look, I had a wake up call when I bought my last car. It didn't have a CD player.
there you go.
I
Hey,
was like, what the hell? I have like thousands of CDs. What am I supposed to do? And then you could find one, but then everything got into streaming.
yeah.
But here's the bottom line: artist makes music. Then there's a delivery system, whatever that system is. Okay. And the job of promotion and marketing people is to get as many people in the public arena as they can to appreciate this music, or at least listen to it and decide for themselves. Do they like it or do they don't? You cannot make someone like music. People think, oh, the record companies had all this power. We did have a lot of power, but you can't make people like music. We put records on the air. If people liked it and they got a response, that's how we knew, oh, spend more money on this act. But if we couldn't get started, even if we loved the music, but it just didn't resonate with the public, it doesn't matter. So you're talking about it's a similar business in that music's coming out, but because there's no broadcast area now, radio is all splintered. Now bands, each band or each artist has like, unless you become Taylor Swift, or somebody on that level, everybody has their own little niche of fans, and they tour, and they might have a hit on YouTube for a second. They might be on Spotify. Some people don't even need that. They just tour. So the downside of today is it's like a lot of little, you have your fans. The idea of being a super duper star is much harder than it used to be because, not everybody's listening to the same radio station or Spotify or playlist or television
Well,
show. It's
the
all
other
splintered. So,
yeah, there's a splintering, but the other challenge is that unlike vinyl, well, even so, unlike the old days where you were listening to a radio station, you couldn't skip a song. You had to wait for the song to go through. Now, you can swipe and skip, and
no, you can do,
you don't like if you don't like the first four bars of the song, you just skip it and you go.
no, you can do that. And I think there's something lost in that because there are, as we know, when we listen to albums, there are album tracks that surfaced that were wonderful pieces of music that weren't necessarily hit singles. Now, these days, we're more. This reminds me of when I was growing up in the 50s, everything was about a song. Even if you bought an album, you bought it because you wanted this song that you heard on the radio. The 50s and even early 60s. 60s, it begins to be an album thing. But now it's people are having hit songs. But so eventually what happened was, as there was more pressure to keep the money up, record labels went, well, we make so much money in pop anyway. Why do we want to take time to develop a Bruce Springsteen or a Bob Dylan? It's going to take us 3 or 4 albums. We got to put them on the road. It takes time for them to develop. Let's just go get a young girl, put a belly button, ring in her, wind her up, get her some songs from, Max Martin and Dr. Luke, and stick her out there and she'll have some hits and we'll sell, 2-4 million records. And then when she burns out, we'll just get a young kid or a boy band. Like it became a machine, right?
Well, let me take that segue and ask you about the old days. So when young artists like Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Billy Joel got their first recording contracts, they were just happy to get the gig,
Yeah.
and didn't pay much attention to the finances. Did the artists generally get ripped off by the record companies? And I'm not pointing out Columbia by any means, but
No, but I would say, I guess in a word, yes, to a certain extent, but in a word, no, on another extent. And I'll tell you what I mean. In the early days, let's say in the 50s, record companies were notorious for ripping artists off. I had an A&R guy, and I don't want to mention his name, major A&R guy, but he had come from the 50s, bragging to me that he had all his R&B bands were, black acts who had grown up with poor people, had nothing, right? And he would buy them a Cadillac and give them a gold ring and a few bucks spending, and they thought they'd hit it big. And he kept most of the money. Now, Al, this is sick. This guy was proud of this, right? I was like, I was sitting in his office getting nauseous. I was like, I got to leave because you're talking about my heroes, Otis Redding and BB King and Muddy Waters and all these people. So in those days, and I'm not going to say all of them because I don't know, like the chess people, maybe they were fair, but a lot of it happened then, and even in the '60s. You will. I just heard a podcast with Peter Wolf from the Jay Giles band, right? I'm a big Jay Giles fan. He says in his podcast that when they signed with Atlantic, now by the time they signed with Atlantic, you're already in the '70s. The contract that they gave the Jay Giles band was an antiquated contract, and in this contract, there was all this language about, well, the record company would get extra money for breakage. Well, what's breakage? Well, breakage is when things were 78s, right? And they were brittle, right? Things broke when they shipped discs, right? There's no such thing, but it's an antiquated contract and it leans towards Atlantic. And I believe that Atlantic took half the band's publishing. This was how business was done until rock became bigger and artist managers who became savvy to this and went, whoa, wait a minute, we're changing all this now. Now we're in charge not only for our records, but we're in charge, for our concert tickets. And it used to be a band would play and they'd get 20% and the promoter would get 80% of the game. All that changed with Led Zeppelin and as it went. But here's what people need to understand. If you're the record label, and here's where it turns around the other way. We're like a bank, right? We're bankrolling you. We're offering you a 2-record deal. We're going to give you money. We're going to subsidize you to go on tour because we're rolling the dice, right? To see if you can happen. Okay, now your royalty isn't going to be big right away. Your royalty is going to be $1 a record, maybe $2 a record, because we don't know. What we know is we're going to probably invest $500,000 to $1 million just to see if you can happen. So you got to think about that for a while, right? Well, wait a second. The contract may not be fair in the beginning, but if an artist grows, then you renegotiate. So maybe the first contracts are leaning much towards the record company, but we are the ones that are giving you a chance. This is before you can do it yourself on YouTube. So it's a gray area. I do know that because record companies aren't stupid, that there was a lot of stuff built in to the contracts of, well, you're going to get paid after all the promotion, after all the marketing, after all this kind of stuff. I became an artist when I became a producer, when I had a television show, which I don't get into it in the book, but I mentioned it. But I had a TV show that I had created and developed with Tony Bennett on A&E. It was called Live by Request. We did 40 shows. It was big. I mean, you called in, talked to the artist. It'd be a small audience, but it was full band, and you would get to talk to your favorite artist on television, live on television, and you asked for your favorite song, and they would play it. And this was turned out to be a very big show, which wound up selling tons of CDs and became very popular. I produced 3 DVDs of this show of Columbia artists: Tony Bennett, Earth, Wind and Fire, and Johnny Mathis at the time.
And are those shows streaming somewhere?
you can find it on YouTube. Yeah, just go
Okay.
look at A&E Library Quest. I mean, a lot of them now are on YouTube. I mean, I think Katie Lang's on YouTube, Bee Gees, Tony Bennett, Santana might be on there. Uh, um, uh, God, we did so many. Bowie. I mean, that Bowie's on there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I produced these DVDs. Now DVDs don't sell that well, and they didn't sell that well. But Earth, Wind, and Fire, a very popular band. I watch the DVD. It starts to sell. It goes into the black, and I go to collect money because now I have producer points. Even though I'm work for hire at Columbia, if you also produce, you would get royalties. I went and talked to the controller. Go to the controller and say, "Hey, guess what? We're in the black, and I'm going to get some royalties." He goes, "No." He goes, "You know what, Paul? You're not going to get them because there's all these marketing costs." And I'm like, "No, no, no. I work here. Like, I know the marketing costs. You guys didn't spend any money. I wanted you to promote these. You just put them in stores." "Yeah, but there's the cost of this. Get this. There's the cost of this building. It's all in there. I'm paying for the fuck. I don't know if you can curse on this show. I'm paying for the freaking marble walls, right? I'm paying for the toilet paper." I'm going, "Dennis," I'm laughing at him, going, "No wonder the artists are mad at us." you know, so, so yes, there is this push pull, and companies want to fight to keep their money. But I'd say it's a very, very gray area. Bruce Springsteen's not complaining. Nor are some other artists who made a ton of money with their label and needed their label to hang with them for 4 albums. Billy Joel didn't break wide open until his 4th record. Bruce Springsteen, even Born to Run, which is the 3rd record, he doesn't break wide open. He sells 1 million records, but that's not becoming Bruce Springsteen with a hit single and hit singles and, bigger, bigger. So I think a lot of those artists appreciate that we help them along the way. And so I guess it's a little bit of both, and it depends on what label you signed with and who was the president and who was more forward thinking. I've never heard a lot of artists complaining about Warner Brothers, which was more artist friendly than a lot of other labels. So I'd say it's gray. You just can't flat out say, "Oh yeah, the record companies were ripping artists off."
Yeah. Well, there are 100 more stories which I would love to listen to, but I'm going to encourage everyone to buy the book instead.
Yes, you're a good man.
Gliders Over Hollywood, Airships, Airplay, and the Art of Rock Promotion. Um, I want to thank you again for your time. And
Let me just say this: if anyone is interested, it's a good way to get to know a lot of these artists because it's written in a you are, as you read, it's written in a you are their style. So you're there. It's not like this is that was. These are exciting adventures. And if you want to know more about it and you're not sure, there is a website. If you go to glidersoverhollywood.com, just think of a glider like a balsa wood glider, glidersoverhollywood.com. You can read about the book. You'll see the media. There's book reviews. There's interviews. If it's your taste, you're a music person, I think you'll love it. But it's a good way to get to know the book, through the website. So
great. No, I'll have to go look at that myself. I wasn't aware of that. But you're right. As I read the book, I felt like I really was there. I could visualize all the crazy things you're talking about and all the personalities. So it's really a great job, Rap.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.